Hi everyone, I'm Claire Saffitz. Welcome to my home kitchen. Today I have a recipe that I'm pitching to you as a great holiday recipe. It is basically a donut hole disguised in muffin form. It is a dirt bomb. Dirt bombs I became familiar with several years ago because back when I was working at Bon Appetit magazine, we published a recipe from the Bantam Bread Company, a pretty well-known bakery in Bantam, Connecticut. Basically, it is a plain nutmeg scented muffin that is, while still hot out of the oven, is dipped in melted butter and rolled in cinnamon sugar. And that, it like creates this slightly crispy shell that like seals the muffin. And because of the nutmeg, it really does taste like a donut hole, but it's baked. It's really quite easy and fast. So for the muffins, I have some all-purpose flour, some vanilla extract, sour cream, eggs, butter, some granulated sugar, and then salt, baking soda, baking powder, and a generous pinch of nutmeg. So for the pan, I need a little bit of butter and some extra flour. And then for assembly and finishing, I have more butter. Well, butter goes into the muffins, and look, there's a whopping 4 sticks of butter in this recipe, 2 in the muffin batter, 2 for dunking, and then sugar and cinnamon for making cinnamon sugar. So I have my stand mixer with the paddle attachment. I have a saucepan for melting the butter for dunking. Dirt bombs typically are not like a full-size muffin. They're a little bit smaller. I spread it out over 1.5 muffin tins. If you don't have to, that's fine. You can bake one, quickly kind of like wipe it out, and then bake the remaining batter in the same pan. I was looking on the internet trying to be like, where did this recipe originate? And I didn't get that far because the only search results that came up were that a character in the show, The Summer I Turned Pretty, which I've never seen, based on a book maybe? I don't know, maybe I'm gonna like love this show if I start watching it. There's a character in the show who made these. And so it's like, everyone, we're gonna piggyback off that popularity and make them. But this is a thing long before the show. Before I get into the recipe, I want to thank our friends at Kerrygold for sponsoring this episode. I've been working with Kerrygold for a long time, and their butter has always been my go-to brand in the grocery store for all of my baking needs, but also just having around the house for eating. It is the holiday season, which means we are in baking overdrive, so go ahead and stock up on Kerrygold like I do in my house, both salted and unsalted. All of their products are made from milk that come from cows grazing on grass on family-run farms in Ireland, and for my money, it is pound for pound the best butter you can buy. It's so creamy, so buttery, and it lends all of your baked goods not only great flavor, but texture as well. So great for things like laminated pastry, but also today I'm making dirt bombs, which are just like a super buttery, really easy baking recipe for the holidays. Because it's the holiday season, I recommend you stock up. It's just the best butter you can buy for your money. So I want to thank Kerrygold. Check out the link below for more information. And now let's get back to the recipe. The first thing I want to do is melt 2 sticks of butter. And this is butter I'm going to use to prep the pans, as well as butter I will use for dunking the dirt bombs when they come out of the oven. I'm just going to stick this on the stove over low so this can start melting. Now I'm going to do a little bit of quick prep for my batter. I have my 2 cups of flour here. I'm going to add my other dry ingredients and just kind of quickly mix together. A big pinch of nutmeg. Nutmeg I think is a really essential flavor in the batter. It's what really kind of like gives it that like old-fashioned donut flavor. This is baking powder. This is some soda. So I'm just going to kind of get all this mixed together for now. And then I can set this aside. And then I'm also going to quickly prep just my cinnamon sugar. So this is, I think it's a cup of sugar and a tablespoon of cinnamon. This would be a great time to replace your cinnamon if it's really old and it's been sitting in your pantry for like years and years. You want to use fresh spices and like a good quality cinnamon for this recipe. So just mix until this is homogeneous. I have a pastry brush right here and a little bit of extra flour. So here's those 2 sticks of butter, and I'm just going to use my pastry brush to lightly coat the insides. I need 18 total, so that's 1.5 pans. And I just need a light coating. Just to absolutely guarantee that I will be able to unmold the muffins when they're done, I'm gonna add some flour. I'm gonna set aside the remaining melted butter for dunking later on. I have this really handy tool. I have to admit, I thought it was like maybe kind of silly when I first saw it, and now I love it. It's a dusting wand, so it has this like, you twist the handle and it like goes from being a scoop to being a duster. It almost looks like a tea, what do they call it? For like loose tea, whatever. Steeper. And it has holes on one side, and so you use it to, it just is like a really nice way to like do a very controlled dusting. I imagine it was designed for powdered sugar, but it works really well for flouring stuff like this. I use it in bread making a lot to like dust flour onto the surface of a loaf or something. Tapping and rotating the pans to help coat the sides. And then if you have any excess, you can tap it out. All right, so my pans are prepped. I'm gonna get these just off to the side. The batter itself is really straightforward. I'm gonna put my additional 2 sticks of butter into the bowl of my stand mixer. I have the paddle attachment. So I already have my dry ingredients prepped. I'm gonna crack my eggs, and everything is room temp. And because the butter is room temp, it is going to whip. I'm gonna be able to incorporate a lot of air into it. And if you then add cold eggs to it, the butter hardens again and you lose that like really light fluffy texture and that emulsion. So the eggs are room temp and my sour cream is room temp. I'm using 2 large eggs. So I'm gonna add my sugar. This is 3/4 of a cup of sugar. I cut the sugar in the batter a little bit because obviously it's rolled in cinnamon sugar and I don't want the whole thing to be too sweet. So this is a very like lightly sweet muffin. I'm gonna start beating this on medium. And I'm gonna let this go for a few minutes. I just want it to get very, very pale and very light and fluffy because it's the air that is incorporated into the butter that's gonna make the texture really fluffy in the muffins. So I'll probably scrape down the sides once or twice, and in a few minutes, it's gonna look like super, super pale and fluffy. That's it. So now that butter mixture is very light and fluffy, I am gonna decrease the speed to medium and add my eggs one at a time and wait for each to incorporate before I add the next ingredient. I love adding eggs to batter. I love how it like slips in. Whoop, flop. Okay, so now the second one. I'm also gonna add 2 teaspoons of vanilla, just extract. 1, 2. So now just a quick scrape, just make sure everything is well incorporated. And now I'm going to add my dry ingredients and my sour cream, alternating. So I do 3 additions of dry ingredients and 2 additions of sour cream. And this I'm gonna do on low speed. So about 1/3 of my flour mixture, followed by about half of the sour cream. Then I look at it just to see if whatever the last addition is mostly incorporated, and then I add more, so then half the remaining flour, 1/3 of the total. Once that disappears, the rest of the sour cream. And then the remaining flour. So that's it. It's like a really, really straightforward batter. Once I see the last bit of flour disappear, I like to turn off the mixer and then complete the final mix by hand, just to prevent any kind of over beating, and also to really make sure I have no pockets of flour or butter stuck around the sides of the bowl. You can see it's a really, really thick batter. So I'm just giving this a few final turns with the flexible spatula. It's like super light and airy. So now here I have a scoop for portioning. Scoops are just a really, really easy way to portion batter for muffins and cookies. I'm gonna grab my pans. And by the way, my oven is on 375 and I have 2 racks, one in the upper third and one in the lower third, because we're gonna bake these at the same time. With muffins or cupcakes, it's better to bake on the hotter side, so like 375 or even 400, because that's going to help create that kind of nice domed shape. I'm just gonna give each of the cups a sort of scant scoopful. This is a 2-ounce scoop. So I did a heaping scoop and tried to make 12, and it's like they were just a little too filled. So it's better, I think, to keep them small because the smaller they are, the more surface area to interior, and then like more, like it's a better proportion of the cinnamon sugar outside to the fluffy inside. All right, so my pans are filled. I'm gonna get them into the oven, one on each rack. They bake sort of in 20 to 25 minutes, and it's very obvious when they're done. You'll smell it. They'll be nice and domed and golden brown, springy to the touch in the center. I am gonna rotate after 15 minutes so that the ones on the top don't get too done from above, and the ones on the bottom don't get too brown on the bottom. Here's one pan, here is the other. So I'm gonna let these cool for just maybe like 2 minutes, and then I'm going to get them out of the pan and unmold them onto my cooling rack. And then it's very important that you dip, like you dunk and coat while they're still hot. So just a few minutes of cooling. Basically you wanna just be able to handle them. I'm gonna turn these out. Hopefully they should unmold really easily because we buttered and floured the pans. So to unmold them gently, I kind of line them up with the cooling rack. So now I'm going to start the dunking and coating process. So I have my saucepan of melted butter. It's melted and cooled. It could be warm, that's fine. And I'm just going to pick it up, a quick dunk in the butter into the cinnamon sugar, and that's it. Every surface. It's not just like dipping the top. This is why they're not in the muffin liners, because you want to coat the entire thing. So I'm just going to keep going. It's a quick dunk, let the excess drip off. And then I'm using one hand to dunk and the other hand to coat, because if I were to try to coat with the butter hand, like my fingers are just gonna get like very, very covered in the cinnamon sugar. And I have a very small amount of sugar left over, but save that for like pancakes or cinnamon toast. Actually, my mouth is kind of watering. They smell so good. The warm muffin hitting the butter and then the cinnamon sugar, like it just creates this great smell. They're so tender. When you're handling them, be careful because they're so tender, they're almost want to like fall apart in the butter. They are so light and fluffy with like the most delicate crumb. Okay. Wow. They really do telegraph like cake donut, but to me they're actually more tender than a cake donut. I think for the holidays where you like want to serve something kind of special and like add a little warm spice, this is like a truly delicious, perfect breakfast for kids and adults, basically. So I hope you try this out for the holidays. I highly recommend you make it with Kerrygold, which produces just like the most buttery, creamiest, most delicious baked goods. It's in the batter. It's 4 sticks. There's a pound of butter in this recipe, 2 in the batter, 2 for dunking, and when you're making something like this that really shows off butter, you want to use the best. So check out Kerrygold. You can go to the link in the description below to learn more. Thank you so much for watching. Happy holidays, and don't forget to like and subscribe.